At the turn of the 20th century, starting in 1906, on what had formerly been the territory of the indigenous Native Americans, also known as the 5 civilized tribes, African Americans founded and developed the self-sustaining and self-sufficient prosperous business district in Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma. Now let's get some historical understanding. The 5 civilized tribes during the mid-19th century were referred to the Cherokee, Choctaw, Chickasaw, Creek, and Seminole nations. These indigenous native Indian tribes were deeply rooted in Oklahoma and had various cultural, political, and economic connections before their removal in the 1830s. The 5 civilized tribes is the name white settlers gave these native Indians in the 1800s after they adopted the European customs. When the colonists arrived on the North American mainland, the native people were living in the southeastern parts of the United States. They were the first settlers there in small villages and farmed and hunted for their livelihood. Historians can trace the Wichita and the Caddo tribes as far back as 2,000 years. By the time the first European explorers arrived, it was home to nearly 40 indigenous Indian tribes. In addition to the Caddo and the Wichita tribe, the largest original tribes of the area included the Apache, Arapaho, Comanche, Kiowa, and Osage. Descendants of all these groups were still living in the area in the late 15th century, but their communities were slowly destroyed by the violence and epidemic diseases brought by the European colonization. You see, Oklahoma only became part of the United States in 1803 when the government seized the land with the Louisiana Purchase. This first step sets the stage for what's to come, and that is power, greed, and racism. Under the Indian Removal Act signed into law on May 28, 1830, the federal government began their systematic policy, which forcibly removed thousands of indigenous American Indians from their homes. The Removal Act meant the government would then claim the lands of the 5 tribes, not just in the state of Oklahoma, but also in Kentucky, Tennessee, North Carolina, South Carolina, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, and Mississippi. During the fall and winter of 1838 and 1839, the Cherokees, being the biggest tribe at the time, were forcibly moved west by the United States government. It is believed that out of 15,000 Cherokees, at least 4,000 died from hunger, disease, and exhaustion of the forced exodus. Because of its devastating effects, the journey became known as the Trail of Tears. A few tribes went peacefully, but many resisted the relocation policy. Eventually, all 5 tribes were then removed to Indian reservations to bring Native Americans under the full control of the U.S. government.